Most of you guys know us, but me and Dom, we work at Ford. We're growing a team there at the moment, which is really fun. So I'll skip that one.
For those of you who don't know us, though, because not everyone does know us here, you did just skip over that side.
Well, you know, I just really don't like a big picture of us up on the screen, really. But yes,
so modest.
So modest. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about what Product Unleashed is, for those that don't know. So we're a community of product people for product people. And we have 3 Ps for Product Unleashed. All right, you ready?
I'm ready.
Product Unleashed is on a mission to empower product people to come together with peers and power up. There you go. All right. So how do we do that? We have regular events where we learn from industry leaders. We mix with product peers, which is what we love to see. You guys are all talking to each other, and we just kind of share knowledge, soak that knowledge up, and we kind of we're on a mission to kind of help you build your product toolkit, essentially. So tonight's agenda, a tiny bit behind schedule, but intro and announcements, that's us right now. And then we've got a talk from Rachel McConnell, all about collaboration, which is going to be awesome. And then we've got a little bit of a Q&A, we've got a bit of an interval. So if you had any conversations that I broke up when I got on the mic earlier, please do feel free to grab a beer and carry those on. And then after that, we've got a talk from Jana Basto about competition, and then we've got a bit of Q&A, a few more drinks, and then we're closing at about 8:45 tonight.
To run down to the beach.
Yes, to run down into the sea. Just a disclaimer as well, the event's being photographed, so if you don't want to be photographed, look for the pink shirt at the back, that's Michelle, and just let her know it's not cool, and that's fine.
Or a criminal.
Yes.
Which sometimes happens.
If you're a fugitive and don't want to be photographed. So yeah, big thanks to our host tonight, the projects. Yeah, I mean, look at this room, it's gorgeous. Been looking to do something in here for a long time, so really glad that we made it. And also a big thanks to Silicon Brighton, who support us in Brighton with our events. Are you going to say a few words, Charlie? All right, Charlie, everyone.
Thank you very much, John. Thank you, guys. Appreciate you all very much. Yeah, I'm Charlie. I work for Silicon Brighton in events and community engagement. It's lovely to see you all here this evening. We are the host of Brighton & Hove's tech sector, and we support over 30 different meetup groups in the tech and digital scene across the city, including Product Unleashed. All the events that we run are free to join, available to people at all levels, and they're all hybrid. So obviously you're all here in the room, but we're also running a live stream. So hello to everybody who's watching us on YouTube right now. And all the work that we do wouldn't be possible without every company who you see here, who are our amazing supporters. We owe them a huge debt of gratitude. And if there's a company that you can't see here who might be interested in helping us out, please do point us in our direction. I'd like to give a special shout out as well to Octopus Energy, James Chase, Hyperion Dev, and the University of Sussex Business School. They're our sponsors, and they play a really pivotal role in enabling us to do the work that we do. And everything that we do wouldn't be possible without a small army of volunteers and meetup group organizers like John and Dom. So we're always looking for people to come and give talks at events to help us get everything set up before everything begins. So if you'd be interested in doing that, please come have a chat with me before the end of the evening. We'd really appreciate it. Oops, that's the wrong way. These are our values. I'll let you read through these very quickly. But please let me know if you feel these aren't being upheld in any of the work that we're doing. And you can also follow our socials, which is at Silicon Brighton, across all the platforms that you want to see us on. We've got loads of events going on throughout July. Next week, we're doing Breaking Breadboards, which is a new group for tech hardware, which is absolutely awesome. These guys come with like their robots that they've made and stuff. It's absolutely amazing. And then the 18th of July, there's 3 different events all on the same night, if you're feeling really up for it. And then on the 23rd of July, the AWS Brighton User Group are meeting as well. We're also marching in the Pride Parade this year, which is absolutely fantastic. We did this last year. I'm really, really excited to be back in the parade again this year. And if you'd like to join us, you can. There's a sign-up page through our website, but I believe there will also be one on the Product Unleashed meetup page as well, so you can sign up through there.
That's correct.
Thank you, guys. And yeah, if you scan this QR code, it will take you to our link tree, which will take you to the events calendar and everything else that I've just gone through there. All the links, instead of, we used to have it like all the links differently on different QR codes. That's the one that you want. So
Get your phones out.
get your phones out, scan the QR code, stay in touch. We appreciate it. And that is everything from me. Thank you guys very much. I'm going to hand back to the guys. Have a great evening. Ciao.
Thanks, Charlie. Big round of applause for Charlie.
Awesome. So guys, yeah, that was the intro. We whizzed through that. So I guess the only question is, are you ready? Yeah, you're going to have to do better than that. Are you ready? All right.
That's better.
Cool. So our first talk tonight is Rachel McConnell. She is a design leader, founder, and author. She's created content for Deliveroo, Unilever, Virgin Holidays, and Nationwide. And she also runs her own conference called Tempo and a community as well for content design leaders. So she's going to be talking to us about how to work brilliantly together. So yeah, round of applause for Rachel, please.
Hello, everybody. I'm going to stand over here so I'm not in front of my slides, and also so I can see them. Hopefully this will work. Woohoo. So yes, thanks for the intro. For my last few roles, I've been running design teams and content design teams. And so over the last few years, I've made quite a lot of observations about collaboration, solved quite a lot of collaboration issues, and just sort of from my experience of where I've seen good teams doing good work together, put this talk together. So hopefully you'll find it useful. It comes with a bit of a caveat. I will be talking about how to get product designers, content designers, and researchers working effectively together. I appreciate that not everyone is in the luxurious position of having all of those disciplines. It'd be good if we were. But all of these principles and tips can be applied to any team, really. So think of it as a bit of a toolkit. Think of it as, what could I go back and try that would have the biggest impact on how my team work? So at the moment, we are really not setting multidiscipline teams up for success for a number of reasons. So as you're probably aware, there's been a lot of reorgs, layoffs in tech, everywhere, in fact. And so we've got this situation where teams are kind of constantly reforming, restructuring. So, you know, every 5 minutes, people have to get used to working with someone new. We've had a huge proliferation of product teams and product managers across a lot of tech companies, which means that individual contributors like designers and content designers and researchers are spread across many product areas, sometimes, you know, 5 or 6 product teams, one designer or content designer is having to cover, which means, you know, it's a lot of context switching. It's really hard for them to get up to speed with who they're working with and how that person works every time. They're like, oh, how does this product manager work again? How does this product manager work again? Because there's never any consistency. And then because of the layoffs, we're losing quite senior roles, which means our discipline teams end up being really shallow. And that advocacy and guidance that they had before is not there. So if there are issues with collaboration, or if there are issues with people not understanding roles, there's no one there to kind of solve that and help them solve that. And then the pressure to deliver, obviously, time to market delivery is paramount in a lot of companies, more so now than ever. And the speed means that often teams don't have that time to reflect and say, how are we working? What's going well? What isn't going well? And refine how they work, because they're just constantly having to deliver. So all of these things mean that we're really not setting our teams up for success at the moment. And the whole point of a team is it's stronger together as a whole than as individuals. And the perfect team is where you've got your disciplines working together, embracing the overlap between their roles, but also leaning into their specialisms when they need to. So we really need to get our teams understanding how to work together effectively, and how, when to come together, when to move apart, and just getting their work flowing through those teams really well. So what I'm going to talk to you about is how to nail effective collaboration across your discipline teams. And as I said, think of it as a toolkit. So some of it you might just think, well, that's not relevant to me, but what could you apply from these principles? So I'm sure you've all been in a situation where you've moved into a house share, or you've moved in with a partner, and they do something that you cannot stand, or they don't do things the way that you want them to. So imagine you've got a new discipline team coming together. Maybe someone new's joined the team. Maybe suddenly your company's decided to bring in content designers, for example, and no one knows how to work together, but all they know is this person doesn't do things the way they want them to, or the way they're used to doing things. And they suddenly have to get used to working with someone different and doing things a different way. And that's really hard. It's a really hard thing to do. And it depends on everybody understanding each other and figuring out how to work together and how to make this thing work. So to start with, I think it's good to think about, what do high-performing teams look like? What are the facets of high-performing teams? And then what can we learn from that to help that collaboration? So in a high-performing team, there's trust. People understand that they can be honest. They trust each other to make decisions or to do things. And they all have clear goals. So they know what they're trying to do. They understand what the kind of product vision is, what their goals are, what their objectives are, and what they're all working towards. They have a shared responsibility for the outcome, so they know they're all equally accountable for the outcome. They're honest, so they feel like they can, debate things honestly, have honest conversations. There's autonomy, people feel like their experience is valued and they have the power to make decisions and be listened to. We have the right players in the right spots. They all know what they're kind of there to do, what their role is. We have the right process, we have the right tooling, and of course the team can have fun together. So how do we look at some of these things and think, how do we get more of this working in our teams? So I want to start with trust, because trust kind of underpins all of these other things. Hands up who's read The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team? Not many people. Okay, I really recommend this book. The author, Patrick Lencioni, I'm going to say, he thinks that trust underpins everything. When you've got trust, people are able to have honest discussions. They're able to solve debates together. They're committed to what they're trying to do. They're accountable, and therefore you get business results. And without that trust, people don't have that psychological safety to say what they really feel. They don't have psychological safety to debate and discuss things and come to a kind of collective decision. They fear conflict. They fear that debate. So people don't want to speak up. They lack the commitment towards the goals. So therefore, there's a bit of an accountability avoidance. And then you don't get the results. And obviously that's problematic, because why are we all here? To get results for our business. So we have to get that foundation right in order to get the business results. So what can we do to build that trust within our teams? Because it kind of starts with us all being a bit vulnerable with each other. It starts with people getting to know each other and opening up a bit more and really developing proper relationships. And I think we often just throw a bunch of people together and hope for the best. We just throw a team together. And then a week later, when there's teething problems, we're like, why isn't this team performing? And Bruce Tuckman's team model says that before a team can perform, they have to go through this forming and storming and norming phases, which is when your team is kind of coming together, starting to understand why they're there, who does what, who's accountable, building that trust. And you can see there's a big dip before you get to that performing stage. And yet we never really invest time in this first bit when a team comes together. We never invest enough time in building that trust and getting people to understand who they are and what they're really there for. So when a team first comes together, there's some things that we should consider doing before we, expect them to be producing good work. So the first is, do they understand who each other is? Like, do they understand really what everybody's values are, what what they believe in, how they work, how they communicate, how they like to receive feedback, what they're motivated by, what drives them, what are they, what stresses them out, and how will we spot when they're stressed? And then do they have development areas? Do they all understand each other's development areas, and how do they help each other through that? And of course, this does involve being a bit vulnerable. It needs the team to open up and have honest discussions about these things. But there are exercises you can do to help with this. So one of the exercises I did with my team, there's lots of different methods and templates that people use. So some people use a manual of me. I found this Miro template, which is like a team player card. And I got my team to, on an offsite, all complete one of these and share them with each other. And then I kind of went a step further, because on the things that I like to improve, I got them to kind of buddy up with someone that had similar development goals, so they could, then have an accountability buddy and hold each other accountable for their development. But this is just one way that you can get your teams to share what they value, what they're interested in, who are they, what's their identity. So there's different methods you can use. And once people kind of each other, they can build a bit more of a relationship with each other. It just opens up. And then the other thing that's really important while your team are being vulnerable, get them to air their hopes and fears, because when a team comes together or someone new joins a team, everybody has something that they're worried about. Everybody has something that they feel could impact their ability to get the job done. So you can do this in two ways. You can do a hopes and fears session, which is kind of what it says on the tin. So you just workshop what's worrying everyone. What are they concerned about this team or project? What do they think could go wrong? And also, what excites them? What are they really feeling happy about? And how can you harness more of that? And the other thing you can try is a pre-mortem. So you get the team to project themselves forward 6 months, and you say, okay, everything it can go wrong has gone wrong. What's gone wrong? And you just get them to kind of put on a post-it. So maybe one of the things they're worried about is everybody gets burnt out and leaves. Okay, why? Didn't plan for sickness or leave, and someone went off for 6 weeks. There was a lack of prioritization, or the organization, can't read that writing, wasn't, I can't remember what that says. Anyway, so you get them to think of all the things that could go wrong and why, and then you get them to think of all the things that could mitigate that happening. And so from that, you get a list of actions. You're like, right, okay, all of these things could mitigate this from happening. Let's take this away and create an action out of it. So it's just another way of kind of mitigating risk and mitigating those real concerns coming true. So as I talked about, we need people to get a bit vulnerable. We need them to open up, but we also need them to have empathy towards one another. And that means supporting each other and making it okay to ask for help. Because again, someone needs to feel like they can have that psychological safety to say if they need help or something's gone wrong. So we should let people feel that they're not going to be judged if they don't know all the answers. None of us know all the answers. We're all kind of making it up as we go along. Asking for help should not be sort of seen as a sign of weakness. Make it okay. Make it, habitual, that it's fine for people to ask questions or ask for help. Because if people don't feel they can do that, if they've messed up, they won't tell anyone. It's a really dangerous situation to get into. So we need that empathy there, and we need to frame failure for everybody in the team as learning opportunities, not, oh, this person's terrible at their job. we shouldn't have them on the team. Like, really think about if you're practicing empathy, because we talk about empathy with our users all the time, but we don't talk about empathy with each other, with our team members. So the next thing to do is to agree how you're going to work together as a team. So I think most people, certainly most individual contributors, will tell you they have way too many meetings. Does everything need to be a meeting? Are there things that could be done asynchronously? Could it be a Slack message? Could it be an email? When are you going to have meetings, and what are you going to have meetings for? And, you know, do you need a format, a really clear format for those meetings that everybody signs up to? You can even create a team agreement which sets out your values as a team. What are the things that you're all signing up to as a team? How are you going to resolve conflict? How often are you going to meet? All those sorts of things. And again, there's lots of team agreements or team contract templates you can use online. Sounds a bit formal, but just having those conversations as a team together can just help get some of these things out really early on. So how do we create shared responsibility as a team? Just spotted a typo on my slide. I'm going to pretend I didn't see that. So I want you to ask yourself honestly this question: who holds all the power? Whose decision has the most weight in your team? Do you feel like you have equal responsibility or input or opinion, or does one person make all the decisions? And often in a multidiscipline team, what you'll find is the product designer is normally the person that's kind of 100% committed to that product team or that product manager. And you might get a fraction of a content designer or researcher's time. And because of that, the product designer often kind of runs ahead and makes a lot of decisions and feels like they kind of own the product experience, and the others are just contributing. And really, everybody's responsible for the outcome, and everybody's opinion and perspective is valuable and necessary. So I think what can happen a lot of the time is, you know, let's say a real live example of this is a content designer's brought in really late to a project and says, oh, have you considered doing it this way? And the product designer says, yeah, but it's too late now. The product manager's already signed off the designs. I just want you to polish up the copy. It's going to build tomorrow. What kind of message does that send to the content designer? My skills aren't valuable. We could have designed this differently. We could have designed this in a more impactful way, but I've been brought in too late and I feel like I'm just a passenger in the car now. So think about, is this really how we should be operating? It's really easy to fall into what I call the content design trap, particularly with content. Similar thing does happen with research as well, actually. But when your team's stretched too thinly, the product designer makes all the decisions, brings in the content designer. The content designer comes in too late to inform the structure or the IA or the voice and tone, or even some of the interactions. So they just polish up the content a little bit. They're not really adding the value they could add. The business doesn't see the value of their role, doesn't invest in them, and the cycle just continues. And this is really, really common in a lot of organizations. So how do we drive more equity in our teams? So one of the first things is to make sure that the product goals and objectives are part of everybody's objectives. So there's real accountability there. Everybody knows what they're there to do and that they're equally accountable for the outcome. It really helps if you can craft your product vision as a team, your kind of North Star vision for the product. As I said before, everybody who works on that product has really valuable perspectives. How can you get those perspectives into your vision? How can you get them into the roadmap? Can you have like an open forum where anyone on that team can contribute ideas to the roadmap? Or can you make sure that they're all capable of creating hypotheses that you can then work through as a team and suggest, you know, the team can suggest experiments and things that you want to put on the roadmap. Also, who presents the work? Is it the product designer or the product manager even presenting the work that other people have done? And therefore they don't have the rationale. So you're going there, someone's taking credit for someone else's work, but also more importantly, because the person presenting it doesn't know the rationale for those design decisions or doesn't have the full picture, they get a whole bunch of stakeholder feedback that could have been mitigated if you had really clear rationale for why something had been done like that. So the whole team should be presenting together and contributing the rationale for that. And then also be aware of language. If a product designer is referring does not foster a team spirit.
Sorry about that.
That's right. Thank you. Yeah, so someone saying my designs, can you have a look at my designs? That does not foster a team spirit at all. That just makes like the researchers and content designers feel like they're in the passenger seat and they're just along for the ride. The other important thing is making sure that everybody has a really shared context. So if you've got 100% of a product designer, for example, but the content designer and researcher can't make every meeting because they're across 16 product teams, how do you make sure that they have the same context if they can't be in a meeting? Ideally, they would be there, but if they can't, how do you update them immediately afterwards on all the decisions or outcomes that were made so they don't find out a week later and they're on the back foot because no one told them that that decision had been made? Ideally, kick off as a team, do your project kickoff so everybody's there, everybody can ask questions, and everybody understands the goal and the vision for the project. And again, ideally, have as many as the team there observing research as possible so they see issues firsthand, because every discipline will be looking at different things in research. And perhaps, your content designer might be listening out for specific terminology or language, and then that doesn't get captured by the people who are observing the research, so things get missed. So make research a team sport, and then ideate as a team. And also, what I'd say is really important here is in ideation, it's really, really common for product designers to just jump into kind of box sketching before knowing what they're actually designing for, what content they're actually designing for. So a really good thing to try as a team is different content-led ideation techniques, because it absolutely totally changes the way you design a product. So one way you can do this is conversational ideation. So you get your team, could be stakeholders, product managers, whoever's in your team, design SEO, accuracy, they see high quality, consistent content throughout your product experience, improves conversion. As I said before, you know what you're designing for when you start with content. And of course, from an accessibility point of view, your content has to be very, very specifically designed to improve accessibility. So I'll stop banging the drum about content design for a minute. How do we create more autonomy across our teams? So make sure all of your team understand what metrics you're trying to drive, and also that they have access to data so they can see how designs are performing. The closer they get to the analytics, the more they'll start thinking in a more experiment-led way as well, and be able to come up with hypotheses that you can test. And A/B testing alongside your more strategic work, doing those kind of small experiments, can feed into that strategic work. You can learn things really quickly that you can build into the longer term work. And of course, that's great because you're continually delivering optimization improvements, but also you're feeding that into your longer term strategy. And then finally, encourage a feedback culture, because, oh, image hasn't appeared. If we don't know what we're doing wrong, we can't improve it. So we really need to understand how to adapt and how to evolve, and as a team, how to work better together and how to improve how we're working together. So get your whole team used to giving feedback all the time. One of the ways you can do this is making sure you've got all your disciplines in crits. So if you're having design crits, get your researchers and content designers in design crits as well. Get them used to sharing work from different perspectives, giving feedback, sharing work early and often. That encourages psychological safety, but it also encourages that vulnerability, because people don't like sharing early work. They're like, no, it has to be finished, it has to be final. Actually, it's better to get input earlier than later when you think it's final, and then you get 100 bits of feedback. Get your designers used to sort of jamming together in Figma. Get content designers and product designers used to bouncing ideas off each other, building on ideas together in Figma. Again, that just helps getting used to getting feedback, improving things from a different perspective. Always make sure you have retros. If you don't have retros, how can you ever know what you could do differently or what you can improve? And most importantly, create actions from those retros. Otherwise, it's just a venting session. If no one's going to change things, then you're just going to be saying the same things at every single retro. And then positive feedback. Everybody likes a shout out when something goes right or they've done a great bit of work. So also celebrate success. If you can, publicly, you know, put something out on Slack or put something out on email and shout out about each other's successes. So just to summarize, take time to build trust, ensure that the whole team has shared responsibility and context, play to each other's strengths, create autonomy, and feedback and iterate. Make sure you really have time to continually improve those ways of working. So, as I said, I run Tempo as well, which is a community and conference for anyone leading content designers. Don't have to be a content designer. You just have to manage or lead content designers. And the URL there. So if you want to join any of our meetups or conferences, please have a look. We also have a Slack community. And you can view a lot of these things on my website, but I've also created some handy QR codes for you. So I have 2 books, and I also have some content design training. So maybe you're in a position where your product designers don't have content designers, but need to, you know, improve their content design skills. So if you are interested in that, there's a QR code here. And there's also courses for different levels of content designers. If you're already a content designer, you might also find it useful. If you don't have content designers, you need to buy this book and you need to give it to the most senior design person in your organization. Give it to them as a little gift, and hopefully you'll get some content designers really soon. And then finally, sadly, A Book Apart won't be around for much longer. So if you do want to get a copy of Leading Content Design, I have some stock, which I forgot to bring tonight. But if you'd like a copy for £15, just scan this, fill in the form, make sure you put the discount code in there, and I will send you one. And that is it. So I think, have we got time for questions? If anyone's got any?
We do. Big round of applause for Rachel. Thanks so much, Rachel. I think that was an amazing talk. Okay, we'll put it out to the audience if anyone has any questions. Come on, don't be shy. Is there someone out there? Oh, John's got one. Oh, hang on. Okay. I'm coming to you with the mic. One sec.
Hi, Rachel. Thanks for the talk. Very interesting. One other thing I was thinking, I lead a team of designers and we are part of a big organization. And a lot of time the strategy changes, we get moved. So we're with different product managers, different tech lead, and we need to rebuild everything again.
Mm-hmm.
How do you manage that also in a context, we don't have researchers or content designers, I'll buy that. But yeah, how do you manage that constant change with the strategy to create a team that can trust each other and build that ladder that you showed?
Yeah, I think it's really hard when things are constantly changing. But what I always encourage people to do, whatever discipline they are, if they're coming together, like let's say this has changed, I'm now working on this thing with this other person, even if it's just a coffee with them to say, how do you like to work? This is how I like to work. How can we work together? Because often that doesn't happen. People just get put together and then they're suddenly getting their head around this new thing because suddenly we've pivoted and now we're doing this thing. And then you just try and muddle through, and actually just taking the time to say, hey, this is how I like to work. How do you like to work? Let's find a way that we can work together on this thing, because ultimately things keep changing, but we've just got to deliver it and do the best we can. Can't change the business, but you can sort of change how you work with people. So I think even just taking like an hour to have that conversation every time things change and you're perhaps put with a different designer or a different design team, that can really help.
Thank you.
Yep.
Anyone
I think there's
else?
one at the back.
Okay.
Yeah, I know most of the conversation is around how to foster the collaboration. So now this is from the first thing you shared, getting used to someone new is hard when you're used to doing things your own way. So what strategy would you also give to the person new to develop the trust? Because yeah, there's usually that numbing phase. You need to get into the culture, but then there's also a wall that you need to break down. So what strategy would you give to the new person to get that?
I think just trying to get to know each other as a person before you think about the work, and just having it's really hard because we're all remote and we just don't get that kind of social time, but even just getting to know each other outside of the pixels and who you are. And I think if you're that person coming in, again, have that conversation. How do you like to work? How have you been working? What's gone well? What hasn't gone well? How can I help you? Because ultimately no one's coming in to take your job or try and take things away from you. They're there to come and help make the outcome better. And we have to just put our egos aside and go, no one's coming for your job. No one, just because we've got this new person coming in that's coming in to do content, and I've always done it before myself. It's a lot about reassurance and reassuring that person that I'm here to help make the work better. This is not a personal thing. This is about making the work better. So it's kind of just reassuring the person that you're coming in to work with, but just also getting to know them as a person and trying to find that kind of way of gelling together and trusting each other.
All right. Oh. No. Yeah, we've got time.
This is it's weird talking on the microphone. I guess a content and a collaboration question. What would you recommend in terms of advocacy for content being content guides and content outlines? So we've done all that hard work with legal. We've figured out all the error messages. We've done that feeding back to design systems. I think that's something we're finding as a challenge at the moment to kind of help everyone work smarter. So, that makes sense.
Yeah, I think it's just identifying what are the common things that always come up and are always wrong. Is it button labels? if you look through your product, have you got a million ways of that people have written a next button? Like, how do you find those things and make them consistent? And if it's just 4 or 5 really tiny content patterns that are repeated throughout your whole product, and you can just pick on those 4 or 5, straight away you can create so much more consistency and quality across your product. So I think the first thing would just be identifying those little inconsistencies and saying, right, how are we going to fix these? Because once people see the impact of that, then it helps, again, drive that value. I think the other thing is A/B testing content. Content is like a really relatively cheap way of getting really quick results. I've seen like 61% conversion improvement by changing one button label. Yet we always go, oh, this whole page needs redesigning. It probably doesn't. It's probably just a tiny little bit of copy that could be tweaked and improved. And if you can imagine the cumulative effect of all those small tweaks across your product and how much that would improve conversion everywhere. So I think sometimes those really tiny things can have a really massive impact. So work out what those things are, I would say.
Great, thank you. John, did you still want to pose your question?
Thank you. I'm just wondering, when you're coming together with new people for the first time, whether when people kind of push back, or the business push back on you spending time on some of that sort of forming stuff, like how you navigate that. Like if you get thrown together and people are just like, we just need to get on, we need this yesterday or whatever, but you want to lay those foundations, how do you navigate that?
So one thing I've done before is make it business oriented. So run a hack day or something like that, and just get people working on real business issues as a collective and with people they haven't worked with before. Because what you find is they do that kind of storming and norming, but really quickly on a hack day. But then they also come back to the business with loads of new ideas that could be taken forwards. So if you can link it back to business impact, that will help.
Okay, I think we've got time for one more. No? Any takers? Okay.
Hi, Rachel. Thank you for your talk. That was really, really good. My question is, if you ever had to deal with a place where there was absolutely no trust, so all the designers very much in silo, there's no shared understanding of making the work better in a very protective layer, how to start, even the chipping away at that can like just backfire because you might look over someone's shoulder.
Yeah, definitely worked in those places. One company I worked in, and some of the product designers were absolutely refused to collaborate because they thought they knew better. And it's really, really hard. And again, I think one of the things that you kind of need to do is almost do it through that kind of social side. So once they start building that relationship, they're more likely to open up the work a little bit. But sometimes it's just like pulling teeth, trying to get those people to collaborate. And, you know, if you're in an organization where everyone's like that, it's tough. Like it takes a long time to change people, a long time. So I think you just have to be patient and sort of play a bit of a long game sometimes until people start seeing. The other thing I've done is get 2 people that are collaborating really well together to then talk to the other people about how they're working and how they're doing it and how they found a way forwards together. Sometimes people just need to see a little bit of, oh, okay, another product designer's working like this. And do you know what? It's okay. It's not that scary. Because sometimes it's like a self-protection thing. It's not coming from like a place of, you know, it's not malicious. It's just self-protection. And, you know, in a current environment where there are so many layoffs, everybody's like in self-protection mode. So it's not coming from a bad place, but you just sometimes just need to do it really gently with those people because they feel, you know, that their work's kind of threatened, or that a part of what they do is being taken away from them, or that their work's coming into question. And again, it's just reassuring them that's not really the case.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Right. I think that's it for questions. Another big round of applause for Rachel. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so we've got a bit of a break now before our second guest speaker. So please run to the pizza. There's not much left, and help yourself to drinks. They're over in the fridge. Great, thank you. with Jana Barstow. So if you've never heard of Jana, she's the co-founder and CEO of ProdPad, a product management and road mapping software. She's also the co-founder of Product Tank and Mind the Product. I'm sure everyone knows Mind the Product, the global community for product managers. She's also the inventor of the Now, Next and Later roadmap. And she is here this evening to do us a great honor of talking about how to outlive the competition. So without further ado, please give a nice warm welcome to Jana.
Thank you so much. All right, hey everybody, good to see you here. Should we kick off with some slides? Oh, I'm going the other way. That way, all right. Oh, you're going. All right, we got this. All right, who's come into Brighton for this? Who's not from Brighton? Awesome. Hey guys, welcome. I've only come from Hove, so good to be able to walk over. All right, so as I said, I'm going to be talking about how to outlive your competition. We'll repeat that because it's important. All right, so thanks for the warm welcome earlier. As you know, I'm Jana Barstow. I'm super easy to find online, so come connect with me. Come talk about product or building SaaS businesses or just geeking out in general. I'm easy to find. I'm the only Jana Barstow out there, so everything you find, you can blame on me. I've got a bunch of slides. If you want to take pictures, you can, but you can also just download them. So grab a copy there. I'll have that link on the slides as well. So I've got some history. I mean, I counted it up. I've been doing product stuff. If you count the time I was doing like a webmaster for like 20 years. So I've got some history doing that. And I've been building ProdPad, the product management software, for about 13 years. And so I guess you can say, I mean, I've been seeing lots of competitors come and go. I've outlived a whole bunch of them. So I'm going to be talking about how to outlive your competitors. And I've become a little bit more zen about it over the time. I used to be kind of freaked out when a new competitor would enter the space. Right? A new competitor would pop up and I'm like, oh no, we got to stop what we're doing. Somebody else is doing what we're doing. You know, we're doomed. And I look around now and there's tons of competitors out there. They're popping up every day. They have been popping up every day since we've been building this thing for 13 years. They've probably been doing it for years before then. And yet I'm pretty zen about it. I mean, back when we started building this thing, no one was building product management software. Product management was kind of uncool. There weren't many of us, and no one was asking for roadmap software or OKR tools or things like that. We were still figuring it out. We were kind of a category creator. And being a category creator is an awful idea for anybody who's ever done it. You only really want to do it if you have either a lot of time to wait it out until the category becomes cool, or a lot of money to throw at it. Fortunately for me and my co-founder, Simon, we had a lot of time. We didn't quit our day jobs for the first few years, and we sort of worked on other stuff to pay the bills, and we were in a privileged position that we did have that time. So here we are 13 years later, still alive, outliving a lot of competitors who came and went, you know, living it up. And, you know, when I talk about what I mean by a competitor, I don't necessarily mean, you know, the tool that has the features that are closest to what you've built. Those aren't the competitors that freak me out, right? I mean, more often than not, I like to think about what people use as an alternative to your tool. And, you know, if you ask this kind of question, you'll actually find out that most people are probably using like Excel or a Post-it note or, you know, some simple tool like a Miro board or Notion or something like that, right? They don't have some complex tool that ends in .io or .fi or whatever the cool thing is these days, right? So this is actually from a feedback form that we send to customers. There's a bunch of questions on there. It's called the Product Market Fit Survey. But one of them that I like asking is, what would you likely use as an alternative if our product was no longer available? And you get some really interesting answers to that. April Dunford has lots of really good insights on this, but one of her takes on it is to think about things not in terms of your competitors, but your competitive alternatives. And one quote from her is that she's done the research on this and she's realized that status quo, as in the old way of doing things, wins the deal 1 time out of 4. So, and I see this in my own world, right? When you're working with somebody, if they're looking to buy a tool, you lose out not to them buying a competitor, but them going back to how they were working in the first place. So your competitor often isn't some other tool, it's the way that they were working. That's who you're against. And oftentimes when you think about outliving your competitor, beating your competitor, you're not trying to beat your competitor. You're not going to knock them down. That's not what you're trying to do here. It's really more about you against the world. You trying to reach your own personal best against a backdrop of different contexts as the world changes and grows. And so I like to think about, not trying to take down your competitor, but really outliving them. How to outlive your competitor? This could be a really short talk. I could just say your job is to outlive everybody else. Ultimately, your competitor is going to take themselves out. Here's some stats. I probably could have sourced this a bit better. This is a bit lazy, but most businesses go down pretty quickly, right? Most businesses go down in the first few years. If you make it past the first year, you're doing pretty good. If you make it a few years in, you're kicking butt, right? And this means that if you're making it that far, most of your competitors aren't. So you just got to focus on keeping yourself alive. And so that could be the end of my talk. Just stay alive. That's how you outlast your competitors. Any questions? Right. All right. There's probably some questions, so I'll dive in. All right. Oh, you can't really see my unicorn. It's all washed out. Well, that's okay, because the unicorn's actually not the best idea, right? What I'm talking about here is the fact that a lot of people love this idea. They jump at this idea of becoming this unicorn, this billion-dollar company that just rockets out. And most of these companies who aim for that, they die. You have a higher chance of dying if you aim for that than anything else, because you burn yourself out by doing so. You have to take in all this investment, and there's so many ways you can trip up and die along the way. Versus my approach. We're a cockroach. We're impossible to kill, right? And by cockroach, I mean we have good business fundamentals, right? We get our money from customers. We have lots of customers who provide that money, and so if one cancels, another one fills it. We don't spend more money than we make, right? If all goes to hell, we can survive, and it's okay. We've survived a downturn, and we'll continue going. A lot of our competitors, they try to be unicorns, and they are not unicorns. And that's just the way it goes. So I like to think about, how you are setting yourself up for different trajectories and where that ends you up. All right. I just like this picture. Does anybody remember the Dumb Ways to Die game? All right, cool. That's just that picture. This is the startup edition, the things that will kill your startup. All right, let's go through. This is one that I see all the time, is startups kicking off with a new startup, and their whole product is a feature. And you're like, that's cool. I like that widget you've built. Except when you look at it, it's probably something that Slack or Salesforce or Google or somebody's going to build into their product next month. It's not a product. It's just a feature. And so it doesn't have anything sustainable that's going to pull them through. And it's okay to start with just a feature, but if that's your whole product, that's not going to make your business, and you're probably going to fail. Speaking of things like Slack and Salesforce and Google, I see a lot of companies starting to build their products on these other platforms. And that can be a huge bonus because it gets you access to their users, right? Build a Slack app, instant access to a bunch of users. Build a Salesforce app, again, instant access. All well and good if you're building on somebody else's API and somebody else's platform until they shut you down. I mean, how many people got shut down by Twitter's API? And Twitter seemed like a safe place to build a product until a crazed billionaire came over and took it over. LinkedIn has been notably caustic to developers as well, right? It can be really tough out there. So, if you're going to build something, build it in a way that someone else can't come take it away from you if they like it or don't like it. I see this one a lot from entrepreneurs. A lot of entrepreneurs build something because they're solving their own problem, right? They see problem solution fit. There's a problem, and so they build a solution for it, and it fits, right? Like that absolutely makes sense that there should be a solution to this problem. I have this problem, so I built it. Cool. But it's not product market fit. By product market fit, I mean that there is a market big enough to justify you spending the time on actually building this. You can justify hiring people and investing more and more time in building this because there's enough people out there who have this problem. Not just you having this one problem, not just, people who, they live in your little bubble. So make sure that you've got a big enough market before you run at trying to build a whole business out of something. Similarly, I see a lot of companies not investing well in their business, right? And, ProdPad was actually potentially a victim of this because we ran two businesses at the same time. Myself and Simon were founders of two companies at the same time. We founded ProdPad and Mind the Product. And there were many ways that this helped us. But in one way, it didn't help because it meant that we couldn't spend full-time effort on either one. And had we not actually focused our time on one or the other, they would have suffered. I see so many companies where they don't go full-time on it fast enough. They don't invest their time in it, and it just ends up limping along. Companies where the founders go full-time sooner rather than later tend to be more successful. It was only after we stepped away from Mind the Product and made ourselves full-time on ProdPad that ProdPad really started to get its wings. In hindsight, should have done that a couple of years earlier. Hindsight's brilliant, isn't it? All right, so that first set is the things that will generally kill very young, early businesses. This next set creeps in sometimes later. Overinvestment, right? And this one often looks kind of terrifying when you are the smaller company and you see your competitor get investment because you're like, oh, now we're doomed, right? We're never going to get $100 million of investment. But what that means for your competitor is that the expectation from their investors is that they're going to go from here to here in very short order. And if they don't do that, if they don't become that unicorn, they die, right? There's a lot of different ways that they could die, but they pretty much have to follow along that path. If they don't hit those numbers, they get weird bridge rounds, they get defunded. There's lots of things that happen, and they trip and they fall, and they just sort of end up being scooted under somebody else's carpet. And it can spell bad news. I mean, it can spell great news for them. Maybe they do become that unicorn, but oftentimes overinvestment can actually kill your competitors. So that's one to definitely watch for. I also see this one is bloat. Competitors who don't quite find that product market fit, or, sometimes they're trying to please too many different markets. They start off as one type of tool, but then try to become another type of tool, and they try to become a bit of everything. And before you know it, you're like, well, are they a competitor, or are they kind of their competitor? Or are they kind of actually over there now? And then no one starts choosing them over you, and they become a non-problem. I've had some of those as well, come and go. And then bad exits. This kind of sums up a group of competitors that I've seen come and go. And for the competitors, this might actually be a great outcome for them, or particularly for the teams who are involved, right? And by bad exits, I mean, these are companies who grew their team, grew the company, and they got bought out by like a private equity company or by another competitor in the space or something like that. But what happened to the tool, to the competitor, right? From the point of view of my customers choosing my tool versus their tool, well, that tool is no longer being invested in. That tool is no longer growing. That tool is kind of off the market. So while they got their nice little outcome, good exit for them, sure, maybe. good news for me, they're kind of off now. They're out of the way. So sometimes you see these exits getting your competitors out of the way and you go, great, now I've got more room to play because no one's investing in them. That tool's not growing, so now I can grow in that direction. And then market changes can take out your competitors, right? Sometimes you'll see things that help you out or hurt your competitors not getting on the AI train fast enough. Or we saw this one recently. A bunch of our competitors seemed to screw up when it came to AI and SEO. A lot of them, when AI landed, decided, ooh, we know that we can use this to make content for basically free. And so they loaded their site up with junk content, AI generated. About 9 months later, Google changed their algorithm and penalized companies who'd been doing that and helped out companies who'd been writing good quality human written content. We, on the other hand, invested in hiring in-house humans to write our content. So while they went with the AI, we went with the humans, our traffic more than tripled. Ooh, we'll take those market changes in our favor, right? So sometimes market changes you'll win if you can read them and you can play them. All right, so that's the startups. Now, what about these giants, right? Somebody asked this question earlier, like, okay, but what about these big companies, right? They've got all this money. How are they continuing to make money and survive, right? I mean, sometimes a crazed billionaire will come in and take it out, but that's not usual. What else is happening in these big companies? Now, I did a talk at a bank. It was a European bank that had been around for almost 200 years and had just survived the downturn in 2008 by the skin of its teeth. It had been bailed out like everybody else. And they were running an internal conference for the product people. So they were trying to drum up this idea of innovation and how do we make sure that we stay at the forefront of what we need to be doing here. And I was one of the speakers and I was talking them through innovation and how it can help with this. And it was after the talk, I was hanging out with one of the chaps who was in the audience and we were having a beer. And he said, some really good points in there, but it's important to remember that every company that ever has or does exist will one day go bust. It's just a matter of when. I thought this is really apt, right? Because really as product managers, it's our jobs to really understand how we can add value to our companies and extend their lives, right? We know that we can't keep our companies going forever, but we can extend the lives of our company. Now, this company had been around for 200 years. This person I was talking to, his grandfather's grandfather could have worked there. But when you think about it and all the challenges his company was having, could his grandchild work there? His grandchild's grandchild? I mean, probably not. It was hard to foresee this thing lasting out the next generation, the way that all the startups in the world were coming after this particular area, right? The banking is being disrupted from every angle. This is why they were holding these conferences and paying people to come in and tell them what to do. So it was really interesting to think about, what's going to take down these big enterprise companies. Now, what is happening in these big enterprise companies, particularly like the more public-facing companies? Well, when you are in a public-facing company, you have a fiduciary duty to increase shareholder value. And so, what that looks like, you're trying to just constantly, very carefully, increase your figures, right? Just keep growing at a nice, steady pace. Right? And this is the really key thing, is that you want to keep growing, but you also want to do it in a really predictable way. Predictability is absolutely king. Because if it jumps too high, or if it jumps too low, if it changes too much, your investors get spooked and the stocks go nuts and then you lose money, right? That's more disruptive than anything that's happening internal to your company. So predictability is absolutely king. Now, the best route to predictability operationally is to break things down into small, manageable chunks. So how do you do that? Well, that's what leads to silos. Break things down into silos. This is why companies have silos. Now, this is not good news for collaboration. It is where things like vanity metrics come from, where teams start breaking their metrics up into things where they say, well, we're really good at this. These are the numbers we have, even though they're meaningless to other people in the company. And it leads to really counterintuitive business decisions where you have certain teams working against other teams, makes them look good, even though it might not necessarily help another team. And it seems like, why are the teams not helping each other? Why is the company fighting itself? It's because they're in silos. So what's happening in these silos? Well, you end up with these vanity metrics per division. So, what's happening in product, in development, R&D? What kind of vanity metrics do we have? Anybody have story points, burn down charts, number of features you've delivered, any of these output focused things? Yeah, we've all been judged by some of these vanity metrics before. Oh, I've killed it. Yeah, I said story points. Boo. All right. So it's these vanity metrics that end up leaving you in this constant pile of having to be measured by how quickly you're burning points down, how quickly you're getting things out. And it's very output focused when it should be outcome focused. And it doesn't leave room for discovery. It doesn't leave room for the team to test and understand and spend time in any sort of experimentation mindset. So ultimately, the team doesn't really figure out as to whether they are meant to be working towards the same goals or not. I'm going to take a sip while they work out the slides, and as I remember where I was going next. It will come to me. And if not, I can make something up. Where does it go from here? You just scroll down. Oh, yeah. All right. Sorry, this is a new deck. All right. So yeah, you end up with the team being misincentivized about how they're doing their R&D. They end up with things like burn down charts and basically rushing to get things out the door and being judged by how many features they build. But everyone knows a whole bunch of features does not make the best product. It's it should be outcome focused when it's actually being output focused. And it doesn't leave room for discovery, as I said. All right. Now, the thing is, this growth, it looks good, right? What's the problem with this? Everyone loves a company that's just growing. What's the problem? They're growing. They seem like healthy companies. Problem is, it's a bit of a trap. Right? We want to really zoom in on this and see what's going wrong with these companies and why they're actually doomed. Well, this is where they really are. Every company, every product has a life cycle. And if you kind of zoom out, they're at the top of this maturity cycle, right? That growth that they're experiencing isn't like this. It's more like this, right? And these large corporations, the ones at the very top, they're growing, but like by a tiny amount. And this is fine. They're expected to grow by this much. Right? They're not telling people they're going to grow by 20%. They're telling people we're going to grow by 0.1%. And then they do. And then like, great, stocks go up. Right? And that's fine as long as they're going up a tiny bit. The problem is that they're at the top of that peak and they haven't found a way to get to the next peak. They're at what's called the local maximum. And the local maximum is kind of like the top area where you've kind of optimized to a particular area. but there's no way to really get to the true maximum without taking a step outside, right? Without taking some sort of deliberate risk. You've got to break out of the local maxima, right? And a lot of companies are very uncomfortable with the idea of doing this because by doing so, this involves taking risks. This is where the CEO of that company loses their job, right? Because if they have a down set of quarters, they get turfed, right? The company is not set up to allow the company to give them room to have time to change their minds, move down, and then go back up. You see examples like this with things like Kodak. Kodak had all the patents, apparently, for digital photography, and yet they were at their local maxima. They had the world in their hands with their photography. Why would they take a step outside and rebuild in the digital, which would cut into their physical photography? Even if it could take them up there, they didn't know it would take them up there. It would involve taking a risk. So they just kept those patents to themselves. What happened? Well, somebody else built digital photography. The rest of the world built digital photography, and they lost. BlackBerry. Did you know that BlackBerry had their best quarter after the iPhone launched? They thought they were fine, right? They were like, no one wants phones with whole screens, right? Everyone wants a keyboard. We're doing just fine. They had the tech, they had the know-how, and yet they didn't dare innovate outside the box until it was too late. You heard the one about Blockbuster? They had the chance, somebody brought to them the idea to buy Netflix for like $1 million. That's nothing. They could have bought Netflix. But you know who did Netflix? Netflix did Netflix. And what happened to Blockbuster? They're gone now. I think there's like one Blockbuster left. But yeah, they're gone now. So, I mean, okay, there's pluses and minuses. Like if you're an enterprise, you have your history and your credibility. People come to you because you are a Blockbuster, right? They know who you are, right? You are this big brand. You've got this huge market share already. You've got this existing footprint. You often have patents or regulations in your favor. There's like a moat that's very hard to cross. That's one of the reasons why it's very hard to disrupt some of these big companies is like the laws are in their favor, right? They've already got they're beyond the door and they've got their foot on it. You can't get in. And then they've got this giant pile of resources to lean on. They've got this pile of cash that's just been piled up and they're burning through it, but very slowly. It could last dozens more years, long time before they burn through. But it's not all in their favor because they now have literally thousands of startups nipping at their heels, right? If you're a bank, you've got companies coming at you trying to take your insurance products, your mortgage products, your savings products, your credit card products, your everything products. And you've got dozens of them in every area. They're taking every last chance that you take of getting margin, and they're coming at you. And you're sitting here going, great, how are we supposed to fight all these off? How are we supposed to survive? 20 years ago, 100 years ago, you didn't have any of that competition. But 20 years from now, are you even going to be alive? And you've got slow moving processes. You've always lived and died by your predictability. Your silos were fine 20 years ago, but they're not serving you now. And you know what? Honestly, there's no guarantee of success in the future, right? While you have regulations now, no one is promising you that you're going to stay alive down the line. So, bit of a survey question here. Who here is with large enterprise companies? I'm not picking on you, just curious. All right, cool. Who's in the startup quarter? Cool. Everybody else mid or other? Yeah, cool. All right, just curious. There's no right, wrong answer, by the way. I'm just curious. We all have competitors. We all have our challenges. I think it's really important for us to think about what it is that we can be doing as product managers to understand where we are in our businesses and what we can each be doing to ensure that we're adding value to our businesses and ensuring that our businesses last as long as possible. So let's look at that. Really key thing is to think for the long term. This is one that really kills me. I see a lot of roadmaps out there, and they all seem to stop magically at 12 months or worse, like in December, because for some reason in December, like that's when your planning stops. You're just going to run at it, and then in January, you're going to think ahead another 12 months. It's just so myopic, right? Teams just need to think further ahead. So this is where the concept of these time horizons come in, this now, next, later. It's not just 3 columns. It's this concept that you are standing here on a new unknown shore, and you can look out far ahead of you and you can see the mountains in the distance, but you can also see the problems right in front of you. And so the things that are right in front of you are granular and right there. And the things that are in the distance are fuzzy and far off. But, you know, for an enterprise customer, for an enterprise roadmap type thing, later might be 3 to 5 years on the horizon. And that's okay. You need to be thinking that far ahead. If you're a micro startup who just landed on this shore, you're just kicking off, then honestly, 6 months might be as far as you're looking, because you just got there and you're like, oh, I can just barely see over that hill. And that's totally fine too. But you need to be looking as far ahead as appropriate for your team. And most companies who are in like, you know, anything more than like 5, 10 people, your later is probably at least 18 months, 2 years in the distance. But I see so many roadmaps that just stop at 12 months because people sort of said, that looks far enough ahead. So think for the long term, and a now, next, later format, a roadmap can really help there. Let's break down those silos. Now, Rachel talked a lot about this and really covered how we can be thinking about collaboration. So I'm not going to go into this by too much, but one of my favorite tactics for this is using OKRs. And I'm not dogmatic about OKRs versus other things like them, but the magic of OKRs is that they're meant to be cascading, in that the top of the company, your management is able to come up with a North Star objective, the thing that's most important for the company. And then the team comes up with sub-objectives that help spot the gap and fill the gaps and basically help answer how they're going to meet that objective. So, you know, if the North Star objective is something like, well, we're going to maximize revenue from this type of customer. Cool. Well, then marketing might step in and say, well, we're going to, attract the right types of customers for that. And then design might come in and say, well, we'll make a delightful user experience so that we get the types of users in and onboarded. Product and development might say, well, we'll make a platform that's stable and secure so people actually stick around. So you'll have different teams who all have different parts of it. No one of them is responsible for the North Star themselves, but together they collectively spot and naturally fill the gaps. And this is so much different than the old school way of doing it, where you have middle managers who stand at the top and say, you do this, and you do this, and you do this, and each report how you do up to me, and you don't talk to each other. And that's how a lot of companies work today. The whole point is it gets each team talking to each other and talking about how they're going to solve this problem. And it uses the collective knowledge of the team. Remember, a company is just a collection of knowledge workers, smart people. And the company was really would be really smart to actually make use of those smart people and put their brains together to figure out the best way to solve the main problems in the business. And OKRs is just one way to structure that. And to allow for experimentation and autonomy. And Rachel talked really eloquently about this earlier as well. But here's one way that you can express that in your roadmap, is to make sure that you're actually leaving space to do so, right? And I like to think about the things that you're doing as experiments. So you're not saying, well, we're going to build a bunch of features. So, well, actually, we're going to try a bunch of experiments in order to solve certain problems so that we can reach certain goals. How might we solve these problems? So changing the language that you're using, talking about hypotheses and experiments, and outlining things as experiments and showing that progress can make a really big difference. And I like the term experiment because an experiment might be, let's build a new feature, because building a new feature might be a great way to solve the problem. But it could be something like, well, let's change a feature or take away a feature. Very few people actually think to take away a feature as an experiment. But it doesn't even have to be a feature-based thing at all. So it could be something like, well, let's, as an experiment, let's change the pricing or the packaging or the proposition. Let's change the CTA here. Lots of little experiments that could be run that don't involve changing the code, don't involve getting the developers to do something. I think for too long, product managers thought their job was just to write specs for the developers to go write code. Oh, that's just what kept us busy. And actually, our jobs are to get the whole team involved to understand the problems of the business, understand the order that we should be tackling those problems, and then thinking more holistically about how we can run experiments to solve those problems. And those experiments can be wide-ranging, from changing pricing and processes and product as well, of course. Now, I talked a little bit about moving away from like your 12-month roadmap to a now, next, later roadmap. And I know some perhaps executives are going to say no, they hate moving away from their timeline roadmap. It's a little bit like a comfort blanket, right? They like their 12-month roadmap that tells them which features are going to be launched and when. I've actually written a guide on how to get rid of your timeline roadmap. And the last page of this guide has objection handling. So basically, if your boss says, no, we definitely need a timeline roadmap, well, here's what to say to them. If it's your salesperson, here's what to say. If it's your investor, here's what to say. If it's your marketing team, here's what to say. Your customers, right? Basically, I've coached literally thousands of teams in moving away from timeline roadmaps to now, next, later roadmaps and into a more experimentation-minded way of working. And I've written it all down into this guide. So hopefully that's useful. Now, best way to outlast your competitors is to disrupt yourself before the competitors do. Because if you disrupt yourself, you move into that dip and then move into that true maxima before they take that true maxima hill, right? So a few ways that you can disrupt yourself and build in that time to do so. This one I call the Google. So Google, I'm not sure if they still do this, but we'll call it the Google. They were famous for giving people 20% time to go spend on R&D type projects. And as far as I understand, I think things like Google Maps and I think Gmail came out of it, a bunch of them. Google Wave came out of it. Does anybody remember Google Wave? Well, that's what became, one guy does. Google Wave became the thing that was like the collaboration stuff, right? So a lot of, I think Android stuff did too. I could be wrong. That might have been acquisition. I don't know. But a lot of cool stuff came out of the fact that they gave their team time off to just go hack away on stuff. All right. The hackathon. Anybody done a hackathon before? I love a hackathon, right? And it's as good for team building as it is for coming up with cool ways to solve problems, right? Give your team a focused problem to solve and some time and space to go crack away on that problem. And you might actually come up with something interesting. At the very worst, like you throw the thing away, but you still got a bonded team. So no loss, right? The lab, this is for anybody in the enterprise. You might already have this in your company, which is the startup that lives within your company, right? So you carve off a part of your team who has resources and budget and whatnot, and they sort of build like a startup, and they have the backing of the corporate company. I've seen some really cool labs within companies where it's like they live in like a different area of the building and they get to hack away. But when they come up with something cool, it sort of gets absorbed into the rest of the company or the rest of the product lines with varying levels of success. I think that's still a sore spot with some of these companies when they do this lab thing, but I think they're working on it. And then finally, the Facebook. So Facebook, mean, they have all the users in the world, basically, but they never launch something to everybody all at the same time, because that would be nuts. They do have the technology to launch a feature. I mean, quite literally, I think they could launch to just the people in this room right now, and we wouldn't know it. They could launch to all the people in Hove and just test in that space, all the people who worked for one particular company. They have been known to do that sort of thing for jokes, but also for testing, right? So what you should be doing is segmenting your users and launching your experiments to just small subsets so you can do safer tests and run experiments regardless of how big or how scary those experiments might feel to launch at the same time. So a few different ways that you can be disruptive, even if you are a big company or if you feel like you're hitting that point of slowing down. Basically, you're hitting here. You've got startups coming at you. Your job is to continue to find value and expand your market and move your way up this way and continue to grow. I want you to be a Netflix in a world of blockbusters. And so with that, I want to say thank you very much. Please do reach out, grab those slides, and I want to open it up for questions.
Thanks, Jana. Has anyone got any questions in the room? Yeah? I'll do the legwork.
Hi, Jana. I want to say thank you for this and a talk that you gave a long time ago. And I want to ask this, following up with a question. So I became a product manager 12 years ago, and I didn't have a clue what I was doing. And I discovered ProdPad through SEO. I was like, oh, this is good. and then I discovered Product Tank and the meetups. I used to go to the meetups regularly in London at the Silicon.
I love these stories. It's amazing.
At the school. And everything you told me, I went diligently for quite a fair few months, possibly a year or two. And everything I learned was spot on and carried me through for 10 years or more. Everything you said was brilliant. I hear echoes of the same messages, really. The theme is the same. So solid advice, and just putting that out to everybody, because we can get advice from thousands of places. But Jana, really solid advice that really followed through for me personally. And I've become someone of influence in places that I went, and I sent them all your way. Go to Product Tank, go to the meetup. At one of the early ones I went to, so here's my question. So that's
amazing. Thank you. Sorry, what's your name?
Sam Carpenter.
Nice to meet you.
Likewise. So there was, in one of the early ones, there was a fella, he might have been called Tom, but he got up on stage and he said, here's 30 mistakes I've made, and I'm going to go through them one by one. And it was so interesting. And I saved lots of mistakes, and I stood up all confident saying, you can't test like that because this happened. And just following that advice. So my question is, do you remember who it was? Can we see him again?
Do you know? It was Dave Washer. On point. Love it. Also, if you want to hear from Dave Washer, me and him are having a chat next week. He's going to be on my webinar. So if anybody needs to get the exact details, hit me up. But just head to prodpad.com/webinars, and me and Dave Washer are having a chat, and I will ask him about those 13 mistakes. Awesome. Thank you, Martin, because I forgot. I have seen so many different inspiring talks like that.
So thank you.
Thanks, Sam.
Thank you. I love the backstory with that question as well. It's great. I really didn't know where it was going to go.
I was waiting for the but.
Yeah. And it really challenged you and your memory vault as well. I love that. So
I had to look to some of the oldies in the Mind the Product community. I'm like, people have been here before. You guys know, right?
Has anyone got another question with an impressive backstory at all? No? No? Okay. I wouldn't mind asking one, Jana.
Yeah, please do.
Okay. So I'm just interested when you're talking about sort of enterprise organizations and, how you convince those organizations to kind of innovate and kind of to take disruptors seriously as well when you maybe get a pushback just to rock with the status quo, really?
Yeah, I mean, it can be incredibly difficult to convince, anyone or anything to change. They have to want it and see it. I think the big thing is most of them that I talk to already feel that desire because they're already seeing the writing on the wall, right? And the big thing that they're seeing is they're seeing the thousands of startups. They're seeing that while they used to grow at 1% a year, they're growing at less than 1% a year, right? They're seeing that their stocks are not as solid as they used to be. They're seeing that the new top companies are these new companies who all got formed in the last 20 years and aren't them anymore. So how do they stay up there? And I think, honestly, the proof is always in the results, right? We talk about being outcome led. Well, the outcome is in these companies who are winning, right? And in the companies who have been experimentation led and are, going to be taking them out.
Awesome. Thank you. Brilliant. Has anyone got any other questions before? Yeah, up the back.
Yeah. Earlier you were mentioning about the things that make companies fail. So you said something around having one feature product, like just a feature that another company could.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Definitely. So what strategy would you give to someone who's got that kind of, so how do you collaborate with, like the Netflix and Blockbuster? I think if there was some sort of collaboration, Blockbuster probably wouldn't have gone off the scale if they've bought in the idea of Netflix. So what strategy do you give to such startups that have just one feature product?
Yeah, so you're asking about startups that just have that one feature. They're not yet a product. Sometimes they don't even know that yet. They think that this one feature is going to absolutely catapult them to wherever it is that they're trying to go. What they need to be doing is really taking a look at, I like to ask the questions around the jobs to be done, really understanding the customer journey that their customers have, and really understanding how well they're embedded with what their customers do. Is this something that their customers use as like a one-off, but could they give it, this thing is, if it were replaced by something else the next day, it's just gone. It's not integrated with their flow. Or is this something that if you were to take away, they would hurt, right? One of the questions I had in the survey up there, one of the other questions in that survey is, how do you feel if you could no longer use this product? And the answers to that are things like very disappointed, somewhat disappointed, not disappointed at all. I can't remember what they all are. But basically, you want most of your customers to say, I'd be very disappointed if you were to take this away. And oftentimes, if it's just a little feature, it's probably not something they'd be too disappointed about, right? It's not integrated into their lives. It's just a one-off thing, right? It's like, oh, I can no longer do that thing anymore, but that's okay because I've still got my whole workflow here. The other thing is thinking about whether it is hooked into their workflow. So oftentimes these one feature products, because they're single feature, they're either sitting on somebody else's platform. So I'm thinking about Slack apps that are like, oh, it's a Slack app that allows you to poll your team. Cool, but Slack just built that, so there goes your one feature, or whatever it is, right? So is it actually a risk because you're on somebody else's platform, or is it a risk because it's not hooked into their day-to-day workflow? So yes, it's a cool feature, but they don't go there every day, so they forget about you. What does your customer do every day in their journey that gets them to the point that they go, oh yeah, but now I have to do this one thing? So yeah, really think about their journey, think about the jobs that they're doing, and think about how disappointed they'd be if you were to take that feature away. And then if there's certain things on that journey where you say, oh, well, while they're doing this, they should also be doing this. This is part of their flow. That's where you want to start building out and hooking in at the same time. And that's where you can start getting a really compelling product.
Brilliant. Thanks, Jenna. I think we've got time for one more who's slightly overrun. Yeah.
Thank you for your talk. It was
course.
great. So my question is, where is ProdPad on the journey that you showed, and what do you do with ProdPad to kind of get it out of the local maxima if it's not already?
Yeah, no, love that. So ProdPad is well established in its space. We have competitors who come and go. Each one of those ones that I mentioned as things that will kill your startup, I could think of companies who kind of came and went and fell prey to that, and we're conscious of trying not to. In terms of where we are and the local maxima flow thing, that's the same thing that sort of exists within different products as well. So it's not just a company local maxima, but it's a product one as well. And so we're constantly looking at how we can understand how people use the different products that make up ProdPad, because it's actually a road mapping, idea management, and feedback management tool, as well as like sub-modules like OKRs and stuff like that. So we're always constantly looking at how people are using different areas of the product and how we can boost different ones. So what's really interesting is when we first launched ProdPad, road mapping was really hot, because back then, 10 years ago, product managers, like people thought of the output of a product manager was the roadmap. Kind of what you expected. But today, product managers actually have more leeway to not just do their roadmap, but actually spend more time in discovery. So this is why we've been bolstering out our feedback tools and have things like AI tools in there where it's like, well, you get lots of feedback, so let's use AI to understand how to improve it and to read through it and to tell you what's in there and to digest it and tell you how it matches up with your roadmap. So it's like, well, one piece sort of becomes like finished. That piece then becomes more interesting. We build out on that. And then as product managers change the way that they think about roadmaps, and we added in the OKRs, that changed it as well. So it's a constantly evolving thing. And just as soon as like we think we've solved it, a new competitor will come in or a change in the market will come and we have to adjust. We have this joke. When we built ProdPad, it was built by myself and my co-founder, Simon. Both of us were product people, product geeks. And we wanted to work on products. And my product idea was something that became ProdPad. And he had a product idea as well. He'd been sketching out something around, it was like B2B SaaS modeling, financial modeling tool. And I was like, well, we should get together and we should work on stuff, right? Well, first we'll build this product management tool, and then next we'll build this other thing, and then we could build other tools too. We'll call the company CreateShift, and we'll create tools that shift the way that people work. Cool. Now, the joke is that ProdPad's never going to be finished, right? Here we are 12 years later, and we're still working on it. We thought, oh, we'll just spend a couple years building one, and then we'll build the next and ship it and move on to the next thing, right? That's not how products work. Because the market's always changing, because your competitors are always changing, new tech is always coming in, right? We saw AI land and we're like, we're not leaving that there. We're building that in. Let's go, right? Let's improve this product. And so I guess it's hard to say where you are, but it's like this constantly shifting, changing thing where you're always improving it and always taking advantage of new openings in the market. And I think that's probably the best way to continue just shifting and growing and taking advantage of stuff.
Brilliant. Thanks, Jenna.
Yeah, of course. Thank you.
Thanks so much. Thanks for a brilliant Q&A. Can we just have one more round of applause, please?
Thank you all very much.
Thank you. What a great note to end on. So, unfortunately, we've run a tiny bit over, but, oh, can I grab a clicker? Yeah, that's all right. Thank you. So I just wanted to tell you about a few events that we've got coming up. So we've had a few this year. We're having a little break over the summer, and we are back on the 19th of September, which will be in London. For those of you, we've got a few people actually that have come down from London today, or if you just fancy a trip up, come along. And then we'll be back in Brighton and online on the 24th of October as well. So yeah, it's been a busy year this year for Product Unleashed. I just wanted to say a big thank you as well to Silicon Brighton and Projects and our speakers tonight, Rachel and Jenna.
Yeah, big thank you.
Thanks to all you for coming as well.
Thanks
so
everyone.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Please feel free to grab a quick drink before you depart us, and hopefully see you all again soon.
Perfect.
Thanks very much.
Guys.